Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber and close the doors. I hereby declare the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee now in session. Will the members please stand? Will the visitors in the gallery please stand and remain standing through the Pledge of Allegiance? Representative Wright will introduce the chaplain of the day. Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Fellow members, we stand here this evening because we all wear different hats. This evening, we're putting on the hat of being a member of the state legislature, but all during the week and other hours of the day, we have different hats. To me, it is my honor this evening to present my pastor, who you will see doesn't have on a different hat right at the moment, but he may put it on after a while. My pastor, Lieutenant Commander Chris Stanfield, is U.S. Navy chaplain of 15 years, twice deployed on board the aircraft carrier, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. That's a floating nuclear city of 5,000 residents and 90 aircraft. He was the air wing chaplain to 70 squadrons. As a reservist, most recently was deployed Central America as a special purpose Marine group in humanitarian support during Hurricane Maria in 2017. It's my honor to present the chaplain of the day, Reverend Dr. Chris Stanfield.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here and to offer this invocation. You know, there was a fellow I was talking to the other day who hikes some of our trails here in Tennessee, and he was hiking, slipped off the side, and found himself holding on to the edge of a cliff. So he hollered up, "Help me, help me." Well, he kept hollering, and finally he heard a voice that said, "This is God. I've got you. Let go." Well, he wasn't sure that he heard the voice correctly, so he hollered again, "Help me, help me." And the voice again said, "This is God. I've got you. Let go." He thought another minute, and with all the strength he had right before he was about to drop, he hollered back up, "Is there anybody else up there?" It is tricky and sometimes difficult to let go of the things we have and trust God a little more, because it takes faith, sometimes a little more faith than we normally have to give. But I think it's worth it because often God has a different perspective. He's always got the big picture in mind. The prayer I'd like to offer this evening is an old prayer from St. Thomas Aquinas. Let us pray. Grant me, O Lord my God, a mind to know you, a heart to seek you, wisdom to find you, conduct pleasing to you, faithful perseverance in waiting for you, and hope of finally embracing you. Amen. Thank you.
Representative Wright will lead us in Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask that you give proper courtesy to our country's flag and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Roll call.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 90 members present.
Let the journal reflect that Representatives Hicks of Washington, Camper, and Carr are excused. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Welcoming and honoring.
Welcome and honoring. We got 3 presentations, then we'll go for personal. Representative Ogles, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I request the Sergeant at Arms escort the guest into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, please escort the guests to the well. Representative Ogles, you're recognized.
Members, join me in welcoming the Boy Scouts of America. They will now present their annual report to the chamber.
Good afternoon. My name is Alec Jakowski. I'm a scout from Troop 2015. Today, we are here to present you the Boy Scouts of America, report to the state for the great state of Tennessee. We will have a representative from each of the 6 councils come forward and present their report.
My name is Max McCarty. I'm a Weeblo with Pack 3172. I'm honored to be the delegate for the Cherokee Area Council, headquartered in Chattanooga, Tennessee, serving 8 counties in southeast Tennessee. In 2021, our council had a total membership of 1,665 youth, served by 719 registered leaders in 89 units. We had 1,200 scouts attend summer camp and 16,200 recorded community service hours and 74 Eagle Scouts.
My name is Miles Snelling, and I am a Tenderfoot Scout with Troop 27. I am honored to be representing the Chickasaw Council, headquartered in Memphis, Tennessee, serving Shelby County in southwest Tennessee. In 2021, the council had a total membership of 3,209 youth, served by 1,284 registered leaders in 144 units. They had 1,218 scouts attend summer camp, 3,950 recorded community service hours, and 140 Eagle Scouts.
My name is John Weber. I'm a Sea Scout with Ship 46. I'm honored to be the delegate for the Great Smoky Mountain Council, headquartered in Knoxville, Tennessee, serving 21 counties of East Tennessee. In 2021, our council had a total membership of 5,507 youth, served by 1,866 registered leaders and 227 units. We had 1,419 scouts attend summer camp, 47,778 recorded community service hours, and 136 Eagle Scouts.
My name is Silas Miller, and I'm a Cub Scout from Pack 643. I'm honored to be the delegate for the Middle Tennessee Council, headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee, serving 37 counties in Middle Tennessee and Fort Campbell, Kentucky. In 2021, our council had a total membership of 11,827 youth, served by 3,834 registered leaders and 438 units. We had 1,916 scouts attend summer camp, 17,165 recorded community service hours, and 138 Eagle Scouts.
I'm Landon Sadler, Captain of Solon County Sheriff's Office, Explorer Post 172. I'm honored to be the delegate for Sequoia Council, headquarters in John City, Tennessee, serving 8 counties in Northeast Tennessee. In 2021, our council had a total membership of 1,486 youth, served by 1,610 registered leaders and 102 units. We had 4,109 12 Scouts attended the summer camp, and 14,681 recorded community service hours, and 89 Eagle Scouts.
My name is Ty Young. I'm a Venture Scout with Crew 408. I'm honored to be the delegate of West Tennessee Area Council's headquarters in Jackson, Tennessee, serving 21 counties in West Tennessee. In 2021, our council had a total membership of 1,412 youth, served by 569 registered leaders in 81 units. We had 389 scouts attend summer camp, 7,862 recorded community service hours, and 58 Eagle Scouts.
Once again, I'm Alec Jakowski. I am honored to be the delegate to present the year-end review for the great state of Tennessee. We serve 25,106 youth members with 9,882 registered leaders providing quality programs in 1,081 units from Memphis to Bristol and across the entire state. Also, Scouting has had over 10,254 Scouts take part in a resident camp experience with 107,636 recorded community service hours. Lastly, we had 635 Scouts earn their Eagle Scout rank, the highest achievement in Scouting by a youth. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for allowing us to come today and give this report on the accomplishments of the Boy Scouts of America in the state of Tennessee for the year of 2021.
Mr. Speaker, will you join us in the well for a picture? Any members, please, that support Scouting or were Scouts, will please join us for a picture in the well.
Representative Parkinson, you're recognized in the well. Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request that the Sergeant at Arms escort our guests into the chamber and that the Black Caucus members please come to the well, please.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, please escort the guests to the well. Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request that the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
House Joint Resolution 870 by Representative Parkinson and others, a resolution to recognize and honor Reverend Harold A. Middlebrook of Knoxville. Whereas it is appropriate that the members of this General Assembly should honor those individuals who have answered the divine call to the ministry and who have served with dedication, vigor, and enthusiasm to perform God's work for their congregations and their communities. And whereas one such dedicated church leader is Reverend Harold A. Middlebrook, who serves as senior pastor at Canaan Baptist Church of Christ in Knoxville. And whereas born in Memphis on July 4th, 1942, Reverend Harold Middlebrook was an active member of the Civil Rights Movement and friend of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He has served as an ordained minister since 1966. And whereas it is while attending Morehouse that he met and befriended Dr. King, his association with the King family continued as Reverend Middlebrook served as the youth minister at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, where both Dr. King and his father held pastorates. And whereas when Reverend Harold Middlebrook fell ill in jail after being arrested for participating in a civil rights demonstration in Atlanta, it was Martin Luther King Jr. Sr. who came to his rescue, getting him out of jail and placing him in the home of his son, A.D. King, who was also a pastor. And whereas Reverend Middlebrook pursued the ordination and traveled to civil rights hotspots around the South with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, a faith-based civil rights organization headed by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and whereas one of Reverend Harold Middlebrook's biggest challenges came in Selma, Alabama, where he took over responsibility for registering new voters after the Voting Rights Act was passed, he was tasked with teaching poor blacks and whites in the area to read and write and to convince frightened people to register to vote, even when some fears were warranted. And whereas in 1968, Reverend Middlebrook served as assistant pastor to Benjamin Hooks at Middle Baptist Church in Memphis, joining the strategy committee of the Community on the Move for Equality and playing an integral role in the Memphis sanitation workers strike. He was one of the leaders who called on Dr. King to come to Memphis and support the strike, and ultimately witnessed his friend's assassination from the parking lot of the Lorraine Motel. And whereas Reverend Middlebrook's commitment to God, his spiritual leadership, and his love for people is demonstrated throughout his many years of activism and service, are most worthy of our respect and admiration. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the Senate concurring, that we recognize and honor longtime pastor and civil rights activist, Reverend Harold A. Middlebrook, commending his 56 years in ministry and extending our best wishes for much continued success and happiness.
Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And any member that would like to come up here and stand with Reverend Harold Middlebrook, we are witnessing living Black history. And Mr. Speaker, let me personally again thank you for allowing us to make this presentation before our members, before the body, and before the world. If you will, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to do an introduction on Reverend Middlebrook, as most of it has already been done. If you will, allow him to say some words, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Reverend, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, members of the legislature, I am honored to stand here, and I am grateful for the recognition that you share with me. But let me say to you that the struggle is not over. The battle is not won. We must still fight to make sure that all of our children receive quality education. We must still struggle to make sure that the least, the lost, and the left out are not forgotten. And I challenge you, as you challenge me with this honor tonight, I challenge you to join with me that we make sure that Tennessee remains a place where all people can feel loved, can feel a part of our state, and can work together. And so I say to you in the words of the old spiritual, walk together, children. Don't you get weary. Walk together, children. Don't you get weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. I close by saying to you, we shall overcome. We shall overcome. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome. And so when we put our hearts, our heads, and our minds together, join arms and forces, and lift up those who cannot lift themselves, then will come the day when we will no longer be three divisions of Tennessee, but we will be one state, one people, serving one God. Thank you.
Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request that the Sergeant at Arms escort our guests in the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant Barnes, please escort the guests to the well, please. Representative Parkinson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request that the clerk read the resolution, please.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
House Joint Resolution 795 by Representative Parkinson and others, a resolution to recognize and honor Judge Bernice Donald. Whereas it is fitting that the members of this General Assembly should salute those citizens who, through their extraordinary efforts, have distinguished themselves as community leaders of whom we can all be proud. And whereas the Tennessee Black Caucus of State Legislators recognize those individuals who are current Black history makers. And whereas one such noteworthy individual is Judge Bernice Donald, who has distinguished herself as a professional of the greatest dedication, ability, and integrity, both on the bar and on the bench. And whereas the Honorable Bernice Donald received her law degree from the University of Memphis Cecil C. Humphreys School of Law and an LLM from Duke University School of Law, and an honorary doctorate in law from Suffolk University. And whereas prior to being appointed to the U.S. Court of Appeals by President Barack Obama in 2011, she served on the U.S. District Court for more than 15 years. And whereas previously she served as the chair of the American Bar Association Center for Human Rights, and she recently chaired a committee that published an implicit bias resource book for judges and practitioners titled Enhancing Justice, Reducing Bias. And whereas Judge Donald also served as a faculty for the Federal Magistrate Judge Conference held in Portland, Oregon, and as a jurist in the residence at American University, Washington University, University of Cincinnati School of Law, and the University of Georgia School of Law. In addition, she has served as faculty for international programs in more than 20 countries. And whereas often duly honored for her important and influential work, Judge Donald has received more than 100 awards for professional, civic, and community activities. Whereas in 2020, at the request of the Labor and Employment Law Section, the American Bar Association Board of Governors established the Judge Bernice Donald Diversity and Inclusion Award, and Judge Donald was presented with the inaugural award. And whereas throughout her estimable career, the Honorable Bernice Donald has demonstrated the utmost professionalism, ability, and integrity, and it is fitting that we applaud the remarkable achievements of this exceptional jurist, public servant, and human being. Now, therefore, be resolved by the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the Senate concurring that we recognize and honor Judge Bernice Donald for her lifetime of meritorious service to the state and extend to her our warmest wishes for continued success and happiness in all her future endeavors.
Representative Parkinson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And once again, Mr. Speaker, we thank you for the opportunity to present to our members and our colleagues living Black history as part of our Black History Month celebration from the Tennessee Black Caucus of State Legislators. I also invite any members that want to stand up here with Judge Bernice Donald. You're more than welcome to stand because this is for everyone. One thing I want to say before I bring the judge up, if it's okay with you, Mr. Speaker, is that Judge Bernice Donald was also the first African-American judge to sit in a bankruptcy court bench ever. And so we are extremely proud of the work that she's done and that history that she's made and the ways that she's paid for many of our fellow Americans that are coming through that path also. With that, Mr. Speaker, if you will allow Judge Bernice Donald, please.
Absolutely.
Mr. Speaker, Representative and Chairman Parkinson, members of the House, members of the Black Caucus, members of my family and friends who are here, thank you so very much for this signal honor. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here today on this last day of Black History 2022 against the backdrop of history. I want to tell you, as I stand here, that justice is more than a word with 4 consonants and 3 vowels. Equality is more than a word with 4 consonants and 4 vowels. We stand here today, earth, and that is because we willed it to be the best, but it can be no better than we are. Why do I say we stand here against the backdrop of history? We know that in 1776, Thomas Jefferson penned those words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What does that mean? It means that every individual ought to be able to achieve their greatest potential. Whatever they're willing to work for, they ought to be able to achieve that. But we also know that there were a lot of people excluded at the time that Jefferson wrote those words. Native Americans, indigenous people were not included. Women were not included. White men who did not own property were not included. But we have worked to make sure that America moves toward an inclusive society. I stand here today as a federal judge, but I stand here with the full knowledge that laws are not self-executing. We have to be men and women of goodwill, men and women of courage, men and women of commitment to make those laws a reality. I remind you that in 1857, when the Supreme Court decided the case of Dred Scott v. Sanford, The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Roger Taney, said in his opinion that a Black man has no right that a white man is bound to respect. In 1896, the Supreme Court decided a case, Plessy v. Ferguson, where the Supreme Court said that it's okay as long as we have equal facilities, it can be different. But we know that equality was not equal. In 1954, the Supreme Court decided Brown versus the Board of Education, where they said that separate but equal is inherently unequal and it must be declared unconstitutional. They issued the remedies phase in 1955. In 1957, I began school in a 2-room cinder block school with no indoor plumbing, no running water, 3 classes in 2 rooms, and the classes beyond the 3rd grade going to school up in a 1-room frame church with 1 teacher teaching grades 4 through 12. That was sanctionable at that time under the separate but equal philosophy, but the court had already declared that unequal in Brown. I give you that history to tell you that we as a country have always had good laws. But ladies and gentlemen, laws are only as good as the men and women who promulgate them, the men and women who execute them, and the men and women who do them. Dr. King said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. I tell you today, it does not bend of its own volition. It only bends because men and women of will, men and women of courage, men and women of conscience, men and women of commitment work to pull that arc toward justice. And I submit to you today, as we close this Black history, I leave you with these words. Black history is American history. And let us celebrate the history of all Americans each and every day. Thank you for this honor. Thank you for this opportunity.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, thank you for your indulgence. Mr. Speaker, once again, I can't say thank you enough for you allowing us to have this program. I hope it's been as enriching for me as it has been for you as it has been for me. And Mr. Speaker, if you will, you come down and take a picture with us, please.
All right, we're under welcome and honoring Representative Whitson and Curcio at Chairman Faison's desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Chairman Curcio and I want to recognize a dear friend that we lost this week, a really an incredible individual. I would say an incredible character with an unconventional guy. We lost Robert Hicks of Williamson County this week. Robert was instrumental in the battlefield preservation reclamation projects we've been doing in Williamson County. He was the first one to step up years ago to reclaim the Eastern Flank battlefield. He made sure we reclaimed the Harlansdale Farm, the Carter Hill Battlefield Park, but he was just an extraordinary individual who loved Tennessee. And he passed away last Friday evening, and Michael and I were dear friends of Robert, and Michael also wants to say a few words.
Just to give you a glimpse into Robert's personality and how he never saw a challenge he couldn't reach. When they were trying to preserve the Franklin battlefield, Robert said, you know, if somebody would write a novel about this place and make it famous, then the whole world would care and they would want to preserve this battlefield. And so he asked about 3 or 4 people if they knew an author. And finally, when he couldn't find one, he just wrote a book himself called The Widow of the South. Many of you have probably read that book. It became a New York Times bestseller. He'd never written anything longer than a letter or an email in his life, according to Robert. And he became world famous because of that book and went on to write several other books of historic fiction centered mostly around the Civil War. But fascinating man, somebody who I was very proud to call my friend. Unfortunately, we did lose him last week. And if we could just have a moment of silence for Robert and his family. Amen. Thank you, members.
Representative Alexander.
I'd like to welcome several groups that are in the gallery today from Washington County, Tennessee. First of all, my county commissioners, if you will stand, that's Jody Jones, Jim Wheeler, Freddie Malone. Freddie's wife happens to be with him, Sharon, who was my prayer partner for many years. I'm glad you're here, my friend. And Joe Grandy, our mayor, and Jim Wheeler. Welcome. I also am privileged to have here ETSU's pharmaceutical students. Will you stand with me? Thank you. And they are Joshua Nida, Madison Smith, Casey Lefevers, Samantha King, and Whitney Blessing. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Speaker.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like for you in the House to help me recognize my county mayor and 4 of his county commissioners who are here with us today. County Mayor Jimmy Sain to my right, up in the balcony. If he didn't leave, would y'all help me make him welcome? And Mr. Speaker, while I'm standing, would you allow me to ask you in the House to help us take a moment of silence for Ms. Marilyn Robinson, who was the Director of Small Business Development here, who passed this last Friday. Marilyn was very instrumental in helping a lot of people, and she made the transition. And if we could have a moment of silence for that, please. Amen. Thank you.
Representative Littleton. Holds call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a guest today. He's not only a Titan or the coach for TSU, but we also serve on the board of the Tennessee Jobs for Graduates. So let's make Eddie George welcome.
Representative Carringer.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to take a moment and recognize Knox County Commissioner Reverend Richie Beeler. He's up here on the right somewhere. Of course, I can't see him. But Richie, can you stand up? But anyway, I'm honored to recognize him. I was honored to be on Knox County Commission serving with him. And when my colleague from District 19 was elected to come here and serve in the House, I was able to nominate Richie Beeler and also vote for him. And he does a great job representing us from Knox County. And also, I just wanted to take just a minute to ask you all tomorrow to please remember my brother Gary, who will be having open heart surgery. And this just came about from this past Friday. So I would appreciate prayers for him and for my family. Thank you.
Representative Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I have some leaders from my community here today. I have the mayor of Crockett County, Mayor Gary Reasons. And then on behalf of Rusty and I, we'd also like to welcome the Obion County Mayor, Mayor McGuire, and County Commissioners James Gray, Ricky Boyd, Ryan Elgood, and Eugene Hudgens. Please make them feel welcome. Thank you.
Representative Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, tonight we have two special guests with us tonight. It's two of Bradley County's finest. It's County Commissioner Cindy Slater and County Commissioner Milam Blake. Let's make them feel welcome, please.
Representative Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I got four of the best commissioners in West Tennessee with us tonight. Mr. Larry Kelly, Roger Donaldson, Gary Eddings, and our very own David Hawks. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Lear Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And ladies and gentlemen in the back of the room, if you'll please stand, I have with me a very good friend and fellow William & Mary Law School alumnus, Mr. Jason Miyares, the Attorney General of Virginia. Y'all please make him feel welcome.
Representative Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, who I'm recognizing isn't here tonight. I just got a text from my wife. It looks like she's at the Mellow Mushroom enjoying herself. My now 9-year-old daughter, Caitlin Farmer. So today's her birthday. And I remember, just seems like yesterday I got sworn in. I stood right here, and my wife was there while she was expecting Caitlin. So yeah, it's been great, and I just want to wish her a happy birthday and tell her I love her so much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Brinken.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Paul Sherrill and I would like to recognize from the great county of Warren County's Mayor Jimmy Haley. Please welcome him.
Representative Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the Hamilton County Legislative Delegation, I want to welcome two special people from Hamilton County that are important to the history and important focus we have on agriculture and a very growing economy. Ms. Shorty Beatty, our urban conservationist, and Eugene McCauley with the Farm Bureau. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Holtzclaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't get to do this too often because the way's long and weary. But I'd like to introduce three people. First, from Farm Bureau leadership, Carter County, Mike Nighteffer and Chris Williams. And then I'd also like to make welcome, and she will challenge Chairman Hicks on hair placement, is the mayor of Carter County, Patty Woodby. Please make them welcome.
Representative Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the Davidson County delegation, I would like to welcome Ms. Tara Houston, the chair lady of the Davidson County Democratic Party. Tara? Make her welcome. Thank you.
Representative Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two announcements I'd like to make. One, I have from the great Sullivan County Commission, 3 county commissioners, Sam Jones, Gary Stidham, and Larry Crawford. And the best is my mother, who's sitting in the very back here, Jane Crawford, and my friend Harold Edwards.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Some of the members have distributed on their desk a little box of goodies that came from Habitat for Humanity State Board. I want to thank the Speaker for making them welcome today and members of this body. The Habitat State Board is one of the governing boards as it relates to your Habitat affiliates in your communities. This year, they're going to be celebrating their 5,000th house in the state of Tennessee. So thanks to the Habitat for Humanity.
Representative Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, 19 years ago today, my first child was born. We named her Rebecca Faison after my sister, who was killed by a drunk driver. And this child of mine, if you're a girl dad, you know what it's like to have a girl and to have your first child. And I got to spend breakfast with her this morning. She means so much to me. And I just wonder if y'all would all just whoop and holler and clap for my daughter turning 19 today. Happy birthday, Beck. I love you.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've got 3 different groups I want to welcome tonight. The newest county in District 6-2 is Moore County. I'm privileged to have Moore County Mayor Bonnie Lewis here tonight. Welcome, Bonnie. Representative Warner and I would like to welcome Lincoln County Commissioner Donnie Ogles and his daughter Tori Young. Their 3 children, Andy, Aiden, and Emma. Welcome. And last but not least, I'd like to welcome my wife, Mary, with 2 special guests, Donette Marlowe and Jay Chrisman from Shelbyville and Dallas, Texas. Welcome.
Representative Hallford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple of guests here with me tonight. Mayor of Carroll County, Joseph Butler. He was right up there, but I don't see him now. But and a good friend of my friend Glenn Casta here that spent several years here in Nashville with the Comptroller's Office. He now resides in Carroll County as a Carroll County Commissioner. Barry McMurphy, please make him welcome.
Representative Alexander.
Thank you. I have one other person I'd like to recognize from Washington County. I'd like to recognize Johnny Deacons, who is our county road superintendent. That's why Washington County has some of the best roads in this state. Welcome, Johnny.
Representative Ramsey. At Moon's desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Moon and I want to welcome the best of Blount County here tonight. This is Leadership Blount class with the director, Pete Carter, and the sponsor, Chris Hurley. So if you'd stand up, we're going to give you a round of applause. If you see these folks out partying tonight on Broadway, say hello.
Representative Haston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Help me welcome Chester County Mayor Barry Hutchinson that's with us here tonight. Thank you.
Representative Wendell.
Mr. Speaker and members, this gentleman's out in the freezing snow, in the floods, in the hot summer days on the roads in Morgan County. He's a nice man. He's my friend. I'm thankful he's here. Joe Miller, welcome.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if I can have your attention for a second, please. Members, and especially those members that serve on the Education Committee. Over the weekend, one of our school board commissioners and a very close friend of mine, Commissioner Stephanie Love, suffered a stroke. She's a fighter, and she's an extremely strong-willed individual. And many of you have met her up here. She's a school board commissioner for Shelby County Schools. Children, the students and the parents and the teachers of Shelby County Schools are her number one priority. She's been in the trenches for a long time. Right now she's in ICU at Methodist University Hospital. And if you will, allow me to say a quick prayer for the healing of our commissioner and my close friend, School Board Commissioner Stephanie Love. Father in heaven, we come to you in one accord, knowing that you have all of the power, knowing that you are the writer of a person's story, knowing that you have the ability to heal, the ability to bring a person and make them renewed even better than what they were before. And Father, we ask that you heal and lay your healing hand on School Board Commissioner Stephanie Love and restore everything that she had prior to this medical emergency and more. We ask this in the dear name of your son, Jesus. And everyone, if you will, please agree by saying amen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For us old guys, the most important recognition today should be Doctor of the Day, Amy Rossen, an MD, a family medicine specialist with Summit Medical Group, Fountain City Family Physicians. She is a graduate of the University of Tennessee Health Science Center Medical School in 1998. Compassionate Doctor Recognition 2014, Patient's Choice Award 2015, and City Magazine's Top Doc 2017. Welcome to the Doctor of the Day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of resolutions.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With all resolutions properly filed, be introduced pursuant to rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar, refer to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With all Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing, in line on the desk, be placed on the consent calendar pursuant to rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Resolutions lying over.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With all resolutions lying over, be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of bills.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That House Bills 2895 be introduced and passed on first consideration.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on first consideration.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that Senate Bills 1706, 1707, 1724, 1737, 1740, 1758, 1867, 1980, 2038, 2120, 2148, 2177, 2180, 2218, 2239, 2301, 2321, 2339, 2407, 2420, 2432, 2436, 2437, 2,664, 2,757, and 2,881 transmitted by the Senate be held on the desk pending third consideration of their companion House bills.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on second consideration. House bills on second consideration. Petitions and memorials. Reports from standing committees. Reports from select committees. Calendars. Mr. Speaker, the House has a consent calendar.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of the consent calendar on third and final consideration in keeping with Rule 50.
Gentleman moves passage of the consent calendar. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, any objections been filed?
Mr. Speaker, item 32, House Joint Resolution 875 has been objected to by Representative Sexton of Granger.
Anyone seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Representative Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And after consultation with both leaders, number 21 on the calendar, HJR 863, to honor Mike Vrabel as the NFL Coach of the Year. We'd ask that the Davidson County delegation be listed as co-prime sponsors and all those voting in the affirmative to be listed as sponsors. Thank you so much, Speaker.
Without objection, exclusion duly noted. Anyone else seeking recognition? We are voting on the consent calendar. All members in favor vote aye when the bell rings. No, as every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 96, no nays.
I received the Constitution majority. I declare consent. Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 652 by Chairman Powers, a secure wall on the southern border of the United States.
Chairman Powers, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House HJR 652 is urging Congress to complete our southern border wall. Over 2 million illegals came in last year, and over 150 countries. 18% of them had COVID. They're bringing drugs into our country, which are killing our kids and our communities. We brought enough fentanyl into America to kill every man, woman, and child last year. Overdoses were up by more than 50%. Sex trafficking and human trafficking are also being committed. And they're being transported to the states, also through Knoxville and Chattanooga right here in Tennessee. We have no idea how many they are or where they are going. We welcome 1 million legally immigrants into our country every year, more than any other country. We have infrastructure on the wall that's already been paid for, and it's laying on the ground. Reagan said a nation without border is no longer a nation. President Obama said we can simply not allow people to pour into the United States undetected, unchecked, circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently, diligently, and lawfully to becoming immigrants into our country. So we need to build a wall like many other countries already have. We need to secure our border. We need for Congress and the administration to do the most important job for which they are entrusted, protecting our citizens. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Powers moves adoption, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Powers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Powers renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Stewart.
I've always wondered about this. Don't you think it'd be a lot easier just to enforce immigration laws with employers so that employers couldn't hire people who didn't have documentation? I mean, isn't this kind of bogus in the United States? And I'm not pointing out any party. We have all these people that talk about controlling immigration. If we'd enforce our immigration laws for 30 days and put people in jail for hiring people that are undocumented, this whole issue would go away in 10 minutes, wouldn't it?
Chairman Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for that question. We're going to miss you next year. Always look forward to your questions. But to answer your question, no. We have people that are coming here for reasons, and you can certainly understand it. Like I said, they're coming from over 150 countries. But just enforcing the laws about hiring undocumented would not stop people into our country. They can already pour into our country and get assistance through welfare programs and other things that unlawful immigrants can already get. We also have drugs and drug cartels on the border. They're not coming here to look for a job. They're coming here to sell drugs to our kids, and they're killing our kids and our communities.
I'll grant you your point on the drug cartels, because I can't speak to that, but struck me, we just had a president come into office talking a lot of immigration. We talked for 4 years. If we just enforced the laws we had and thrown some people in jail for hiring people illegally, I think this entire problem would have disappeared, because I think everybody in this room knows that nobody would come across our border without documents if they couldn't get a job here. And the only reason they could get a job is because I believe under the recent administration and perhaps under previous ones, nobody enforced the law with respect to employers. I mean, if people couldn't get jobs, which is something that other countries have no difficulty enforcing, then none of these other things would be happening and no one would want to come across that border without documents because they couldn't get anything once they got here. I'll tell you, there are other countries, I think of Japan, they don't have immigration issues because they enforce their immigration laws. It's pretty simple. It seems like if we really wanted to do something about this, we could do it in about an hour. All we'd have to do is actually start enforcing the laws we have on the books instead of doing what we do, which is talking about border walls and all this other stuff, and then actually not enforcing any of the laws that businesses can hire people for really low wages instead of American workers for high wages.
Chairman Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, if we were an island nation like Japan, we would have a lot easier job of enforcing our borders. We don't seem to have that problem coming in on the East Coast or the West Coast, but with the southern border, they're pouring in from a lot of nations, as you know, that are very, very poor. They're very distressed countries. So yes, a lot of them are coming here for jobs, and I agree with you. We should be enforcing those laws that we do not hire illegal immigrants, and I agree with that 100%. But we also, when we have 1 million people coming here legally every year, we want to hire people that come here legally, that are vetted, and we know who they are, and they come here through the proper process. I worked with a lady one time from Colombia. Her and her husband, it took her 10 years and $10,000 to get here from Colombia. She is a paralegal. Her husband owns a construction company. They came here, became U.S. citizens, raised a family, and they did it the right way. Those are the type of people that we want.
Representative Stewart.
Well, like you say, people that immigrate to our country the right way through the process, we should all celebrate that our country's built on that. I agree with you. I do kind of think it's pretty obvious this is an issue where we have basically, we have our political class just not telling the truth to the people. We're talking about one thing when, of course, we could solve this issue like many countries in a matter of days if we would just enforce our laws that exist. Because obviously, if we didn't have a tacit policy of allowing this employment to be freely given all over the country, we wouldn't have anybody trying to come in this country illegally because they couldn't get jobs when they got here. Thank you.
Leader Gamp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The representative makes a very good point. And the question we have to stand here and ask ourselves is, why is our current president not enforcing the law? That's the question we got to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 652, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 70, 22 nays, one present, not voted.
House Joint Resolution 652, and received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare it adopted without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1866 by Representative Castro, relative to child custody.
Representative Cassidy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Leader. I move passage of House Bill 1866 on third and final consideration.
Representative Cassidy moves passage, public second. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1 rewrites the bill. I move to adopt Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1 and defer to the sponsor for explanation.
Chairman Farmer moves adoption. Amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Cassidy, you're recognized.
Speaker, the amendment rewrites the bill, and it simply adds to the list of factors a court must consider when determining the custody of a child.
whether or not a parent has failed to pay court-ordered child support for 3 years or more. I move adoption.
Representative Castor renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Oh, Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the bill sponsor. We already talked about this in the committee, so this is nothing new to you. My concern about the bill is, the unintended consequences, and I understand, financial. Let me be clear, so nobody, mix my words up here. Financial responsibility of fathers is extremely important. That time with that child with both parents is also just as important. Most of the children that are tied up in criminal activity right now, you can find one common denominator in almost 100% of them, is that the father was missing or a parent was missing in the home for that guidance that they couldn't get. With this bill, and I understand what the sponsor is trying to do. He's trying to get people to pay up their child support. I get that, and I agree that they should. But if we remove these fathers, we're exasperating a problem that's already happening. And it also needs to be considered that if an individual has been incarcerated for 36 months, they've been incarcerated so they couldn't pay the child support. They come out, they want to have visitation and get on the right track and be a father to their child, because we're talking about the non-custodial parent in most cases, which would be the father. Come out after 36 months, want to get, have time with their child, but they're back 36 months in child support. And under this legislation, that judge can't factor. He can factor that 36 months behind child support and say, no, you can't have visitation with your child. And all of this I spoke to the sponsor about. The sponsor, he knows where I am, but I just had to get it on the record, that, we're fighting to put fathers back into the lives of the children. And so I think we should be working more towards that, uniting families versus possibly adding another tool to break families up. And Mr. Sponsor, thank you for your indulgence. You know where I was on this already. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members.
Representative Hardaway, did I see a hand go up?
Yes, sir, you did. Anytime we're talking about children and depriving them of the opportunity to both responsible parents, I'm gonna raise both hands, Mr. Speaker. All of the clinical research, all of the data in juvenile court suggests that when you keep a child away from, in particular, their father, you raise the odds that he or she will go off track and end up in the criminal justice center. With all due respect to the sponsor, this bill makes no sense. There's nothing rational about it. If you've got data that suggests that fathers who don't pay child support or mothers who don't pay child support are going to benefit the child by not being there, I'd sure like to see it. I've been working on this problem for decades. The evidence says clearly that both parents, two responsible parents, colleagues, in the life of the child does way more than any other factor on making sure that that child turns out to be a well-balanced, productive adult. So I would encourage you not to support this bill. I don't know what the genesis was. I'll ask the sponsor, what problem are we trying to cure?
Representative Castor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first, let's be clear. The amendment is very clear. It just gives one more consideration for the judge to look at. So if you're reading the bill, you must read the amendment which rewrites the bill. And the amendment simply states it's a factor that a judge will look at if a parent refuses to support their child financially.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. And of course, that did not answer my question. My question is, what problem are we trying to cure? Are you suggesting, sir, that a parent who cannot pay child support through some magic would all of a sudden have it if they're deprived of their child, if the extortion is used that you can't see your child? That child is not ignorant. Children know what's going on. Now you're establishing some type of financial value to a relationship with the parent. That's wrong.
Representative Casta.
I would like to be clear, the amendment is one of many items that a judge will look at in determining visitation rights. So when you use the words shall, that's not what we're talking about. You're off the bill. The amendment makes the bill. The amendment says it is one factor of many factors that a judge will look at when determining visitation rights, period.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. To the sponsor, I don't believe I used the word shall in describing the language of the amendment that makes the bill. What I will do is tell you that anytime that you add a factor for consideration, it tells the courts, it tells all of interested parties that, hey, this is more important, this particular factor that you're putting there, this is more important than that relationship, that unalienable right that every child has to two responsible parents, that money is more important than that relationship with the parents. That's wrong. And if you can tell me that the judge can't consider that now, I'd be surprised. Can you tell me that?
Representative Cassidy.
Mr. Speaker, I don't practice law. I've never been in a family court. I don't know. What I do know is if you love your child, you will provide for them financially. If you don't love your child, you will neglect your child and walk off, and they'll go hungry and without clothes. This is simply one more factor of many factors to determine your right to visit your child. You have an obligation as a parent. You must fulfill that obligation. If you choose not to, there is no relation because you don't love your child.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. And I'm going to wind up. Anytime that a sponsor tells me they don't know what their bill will do or why they brought it, then I'm going to do the responsible thing and yield the floor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, sponsor, for trying.
Representative Towns.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Sponsor yield. Thank you, sir. Mr. Representative, what I've found is that within the country, in America, there is a problem with men spending time with their children in the country. It's an epidemic. For whatever reason it is, as been discussed, the data shows that these children have a difficult time. They carry that heartache and that pain and that malgrowth into adulthood as well. A lot of young men, I've seen professional football players on TV, professional artists on TV, and they talk about the problems that they've had growing up. And you'll see them crying sometime because they don't have the relationship with their dad. Men don't understand the power of and what they are supposed to really, really represent in their families. And it's not only money and being able to take care of your family. We're supposed to do that. Scripturally bound, we're supposed to do that. And there are many instances where men don't do it, and they should. What I would think is that one of the things that be in the judge's quiver, if the guy is not doing it, is sentence that guy to more time. Give him double time, give him triple time, make him do it. If he's out with the young child that he has or whatever the child age may be, that particular child is going to spend more time with the dad, as well as the father is going to have to spend money on the child while they're together. I think less time undermines what we're trying to do as a country, and that's to stabilize all this bad behavior that we find in our young people, and it carries over to adulthood. I would think that more time would be a problem. Markets ebb and flow, financial markets ebb and flow, economies ebb and flow, and sometimes things happen. Mr. Representative, what about payroll deduction? If we found who the dad is, found out we know who the dad is, why can't we not take it out of the check?
Representative Castro.
Mr. Speaker, this doesn't deal with that. It simply says this is a factor that a judge can consider. The judge, when this case, in any case comes before him, he has a list of things to consider. He may want to do that, but this amendment doesn't deal with that.
Representative Towns.
Okay, thank you. In other words, you're giving the judge some other lever that he or she can pull to try to, reach that desired result. So help me to understand, what is the purpose of 3 years? Is there any meaning behind that?
Representative Castro.
Could you repeat that, Mr. Speaker? I didn't hear the question.
Representative Towns.
Yes, sir. I'm asking, is there any real purpose behind the 3 years? Is there something significant behind the 3 years?
Representative Castro.
Some states were as many as 8 years. Some states were as few as 36 months. 36 months seemed logical to me.
Representative Towns.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Representative, and I know that, I would venture to say that all the men and women on this House floor want there to be stable families in this country. You're not going to change the core of this country until we improve families. It's not going to change. It can't. We'll make incremental progress small, but it's the families and those men, and I'm with you, we have to figure out a way to ensure that there's more time spent. If this doesn't work, maybe we'll come back and figure something else out. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Representative, thank you very much.
Representative Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I call previous question.
Previous question been called. Any objection? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 1866 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 76, 15 nays, 3 present, unvoted.
House Bill 1866, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1732 by Chairman Halsey, relative to constables. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Halsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute conform to Senate Bill 1782.
Chairman Halsey moves to substitute conform Senate Bill 1782 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Halsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1782 on final consideration.
Chairman Halsey moves passage of Senate Bill 1782 on third and final consideration. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Amendment 1 by Representative Halsey. Mr. Speaker, it was timely filed.
Chairman Halsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment just moves this bill right back to the original language, word for word, that we moved through the committees in the House. And I move for adoption.
Chairman Halsey moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just ask the sponsor to explain the amendment.
Chairman Halsey.
Okay, the Senate passed this bill just about 35, 40 minutes ago. We're only on bill number 2 on the calendar. We could have built a half a mile of that border wall in the meantime. At any rate, the Senate passed it over there and they changed a lot of the words and diluted the bill. So I want to add an amendment to push it back to the original language that we had so we can go to conference and argue over it.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So what are you saying? You're going to conference, you're not going to pass it? I'm just trying to figure out what the amendment says that you put on it.
Chairman Holsey.
I can explain that when we get to the bill because the amendment's going to make the bill.
Any further discussion on the amendment? All right, we'll be on the board. Chairman Holsey moves adoption amendment number 1, probably second. All those in favor of amendment number 1, when the bell rings, all in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays, 1 present, not voted.
Amendment number 1 passes. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Holsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill realizes that all law enforcement has a mechanism to deal with criminal conduct of police, except for constables. And so what this bill does, it creates a mechanism to deal with wayward constables who commit crime. If they are arrested for crime or they're indicted for crime, this bill will have a criminal court judge put them on administrative leave with criminal contempt charges if they refuse till the alleged crime has been adjudicated. And if found guilty, the constable be ousted from office by order of the court. The constable be provided a right to a hearing and also a right to appeal, and he has a right to counsel. And that's the bill. I move motion, or I move consideration here, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Holsey renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1782 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Williams, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 94, no nays.
Senate Bill 1782, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Let the journal reflect. Representative Casta and Representative Calfee are excused. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1834 by Representative Hall and others relative to driving under the influence.
Representative Hall, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the passage of House Bill 1834 on its third and final consideration.
Representative Hall moves passage, following second, and Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Curcio, you're recognized.
Curcio. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1 extends the time in which the clerk shall remit the child maintenance payments from 3 to 10 working days. With that, I move to adopt.
Chairman Curcio moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Hall, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1834 is very simple and straightforward. If a parent of a minor child dies at the hands of a drunk driver, the convicted drunk driver is then responsible for child support. This legislation takes the shackles off of the DA and the judges. If passes, not only does it hold drunk drivers accountable, it also protects our most valuable resource, which is the children of this great state. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Hall renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative, I just want to thank you for bringing the bill. We heard several fiery and passionate speeches earlier about child support, but in cases like this, you've got an intoxicated driver on alcohol, marijuana, pills, whatever, and that person has crashed into and taken a parent from a child. And I stand in support of this and say thank you for bringing the bill. I wish we'd have thought of it years ago, and I hope everyone in this chamber will unanimously support this, because there are children growing up all over this state that don't have a parent to tuck them in at night, to pay for their food and lodging, to help care for them throughout their childhood due to the selfish selfish decisions of someone else. So I think it extremely appropriate that they should have to pay child support for that child whose parent they took. Thank you, sir, for bringing the bill.
Representative Parkinson.
I got to give it to you, Maureen. That's a very creative bill. I wish we could add murder to it and other crimes that removes a parent. That's a good bill, and I'm signing on to it, man. Thank you for that. Thank you for what you're doing. Just like a devil dog. Thank you, sir.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. We are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 1834 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
House Bill 1834 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare pass without objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1963 by Chairman Doggett relative to the drug offender registry. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Doggett, you are recognized.
I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2339.
Chairman Doggett moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2339 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2339 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Doggett moves passage of Senate Bill 2339 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Doggett, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill requires the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation to remove from its drug offender registry the name and other identification or identifying factors of deceased individuals. And with that, I renew my motion.
Chairman Doggett renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2339, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Cheryl, aye. Vaughn, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
Senate Bill 2339 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare pass without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2277 by Chairman Hawk and others relative to petitions.
Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker, I move passage of House Bill 2277 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Hawk moves passage. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment removes a portion of the bill, and I defer for the sponsor for further explanation. Move to adopt.
Chairman Crawford moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Currently, Davidson County is the only county which is exempt from the provisions of requiring 15% of registered voters to call a petition for recall referendum or another initiative. This puts Davidson County on the same plane as all the other 95 counties across the state of Tennessee. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Hawk renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2277 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Freeman, aye. Lamberth, aye. Vaughn, aye. Lamberth. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
House Bill 2277 having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2655 by Chairman Hawk relative to electronic delivery of health care.
Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2655 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Hawk moves passage. Properly second. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment.
House Insurance Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Kumar, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, House Insurance Committee Amendment Number 1 clarifies that the tolling of the in-person encounter requirement during a state of emergency only applies to healthcare service providers or patients in the affected geographical area. With that explanation, Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt.
Chairman Kumar moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. You adopt the next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2020, the General Assembly passed updates to state law regarding to the delivery of telehealth services. What this bill does, we found it's been working well, so we're simply removing the sunset provision that was on this legislation and continuing, as we've seen, is working well. With that explanation, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Hawk renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of House Bill 2655 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Love aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
House Bill 2655 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1729 by Representative Leatherwood, relative to the administration of the State Board of Equalization. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Leatherwood, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1677.
Representative Leatherwood moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1677, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Leatherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1677 on third and final consideration.
Representative Leatherwood moves passage of Senate Bill 1677 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Leatherwood, you are recognized.
I thought we were adopting.
It's the same as the
Same as Senate. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, I renew my motion.
Representative Leatherwood renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, thank you for this legislation. The State Board of Equalization is pretty complex and has their hands in a lot of different things. Can you explain precisely what you're doing with this legislation and what extensions you're making here?
Representative Leatherwood.
Yes, thank you. And in the big scope, we're creating efficiencies in the State Board of Equalization process. Part of the way we're doing that is by actually codifying the current practice, especially related to the executive secretary's authority to rule on different pretrial motions. And we're also streamlining the revocation process for the tax-exempt properties that no longer qualify for that tax-exempt purpose.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There was a provision in here that, in the amendment, you remove the provision that the State Board of Equalization's judgment will carry through subsequent years until the next reappraisal. That was taken out by the amendment. Can you explain why that was done?
Representative Leatherwood.
Yes, sir. That amendment limited the reasons that the assessor could alter the value to just errors and omissions by the assessor. So it didn't take into account that you could have a property that's vacant and the appraisal in one given year is on that vacant property. And again, the appraisals might not happen for every 4 years. But in the subsequent years, somebody might build a strip center on there, build a house on there. So the property could increase in value. With that amendment in there, the assessor couldn't look at that. Now, current law allows the assessor to look at that for making reevaluations between reappraisals. So what taking that amendment or adopting this amendment, which deletes section 2, it just leaves in the code those carry forward values, the reasons for adjusting the carry forward value. So it keeps in code those current reasons for reevaluating the property.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, sponsor. I appreciate you answering that. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1677 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 94, no nays.
Senate Bill 1677 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2638 by Representative Gillespie relative to charitable gaming.
Representative Gillespie, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of HB 2638 on third and final consideration.
Representative Gillespie moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Amendment 1 by Representative Gillespie. Mr. Speaker, it was timely filed.
Representative Gillespie, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adoption of amendment number 1.
Representative Gillespie moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? All right, well, we're on the board. All those in favor of amendment number 1, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? We're on the amendment. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
Amendment number 1 is adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Gillespie, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this bill does is it came from the Secretary of State's office. The University of Memphis Alumni Association did not file to get a permit for their charitable gaming event in time. And what this does is just allows them to do that later this year. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative Gillespie renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2638 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 83, 4 nays, 5 present, not voting.
House Bill 2638, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2238 by Representative Freeman relative to manufacturers of alcohol.
Representative Freeman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2238 on third and final consideration.
Representative Freeman moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This legislation aligns Tennessee law with the recently effective Federal Craft Beverage Modernization Act. Under this legislation, a Tennessee distillery can share or lease to another distillery license holder their equipment to manufacture alcohol and take advantage of the federal tax savings afforded under this federal act. These alternating proprietorship agreements, as they are formally called, must individually receive approval from both the TTB and the TABC prior to commencing operation at the distillery. The distilleries and the TABC and the wholesalers all vetted this legislation extensively and have signed off. And with that, I'll renew my motion.
Representative Freeman renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2238, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 76, 12 nay, 3 present, unvoted.
House Bill 2238, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2240 by Representative Freeman relative to charitable gaming.
Representative Freeman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2240 on third and final consideration.
Representative Freeman moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Amendment 1 by Representative Freeman. Mr. Speaker, it was timely filed.
Representative Freeman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption of Amendment 1.
Representative Freeman moves adoption of amendment number 1. Properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? All right, we're on the board on this one. All those in favor of amendment number 1, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 78, 8 nays, 2 present, not voted.
Amendment number 1 is adopted. Next amendment, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2240 with the amendment simply opens up the time for people to register for the lottery or a gaming license from July 1st to June 30th, 2022. I renew my motion.
Representative Freeman renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't have an issue with your bill. I'm just a little bit confused. A couple bill slots ahead, we had almost exactly the same bill with a 7-day difference in the amendment. We're not going to put the two bills in conflict by passing both of them, I assume. Can you help me with that? Or maybe you are as clueless as I am right now.
Representative Freeman.
I'm not going to answer that one, but thank you, Mr. Speaker. His is for the one that we just passed was for next year. This is for this year. So this extends it for those that missed the deadline and want to have an event before the end of this fiscal year.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for that explanation. I now know why we have two. So one is retroactive to last year because we didn't pass it. Thank you.
Very good. Any further discussion? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2240 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 78, 7 nays, 5 present, not voted.
House Bill 2240 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1719 by Representative Reedy and others relative to an assessment on ground ambulance service providers.
Chairman Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1719 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reedy moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Reedy, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1719 extends the ground ambulance assessment fee for another year. I renew my motion.
Chairman Reedy renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 1719, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Todd was an aye. Mr. Clerk, Shaw's aye. Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
House Bill 1719 having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1712 by Representative Johnson relative to sales and use taxes.
Deputy Speaker Johnson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1712 on third and final consideration.
Deputy Speaker Johnson moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Deputy Speaker Johnson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Montgomery County is in the process of building a $130 million multi-purpose event center. It's going to be managed by the Nashville Predators. This has created a retail boom in the downtown area. A local family has agreed to donate the land directly across from the event center for the purpose of building this. Presently, there are no taxes being collected on this property, and this would allow the county to build this facility. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Deputy Speaker Johnson renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 1712, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays, one present, not voting.
House Bill 1712, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Let the journal reflect. Representative Kumar is excused. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1853 by Chairman Boyd and others relative to immigration.
Chairman Boyd, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1853 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Boyd moves passage, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Vaughn, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I expeditiously move to adopt Commerce Committee Amendment 1, and I will defer to the bill's sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Vaughn moves adoption of Amendment Number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Amendment Number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Boyd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Bill 1853 makes various changes to state law with regard to the use of E-Verify. The first change that it makes is it lowers the threshold from an employer of 50 employees down to an employer of 25 employees. It adds the word rehire into the list of prohibited practices for an employee. Currently, you cannot employ, recruit, or refer for a fee an illegal alien. It adds rehire to that. It adds protections in place for an employer in the event that there is a failure of the E-Verify system or it is not operational. It creates some resources from the Department of Labor to help employers that either do not have internet access or employ less than 50 employers. And it clears up some ambiguity between federal immigration law and state workers' compensation law to make it clear that there cannot be any retaliatory discharge claims if an employee is terminated for being illegal, even if they have filed a workers' compensation claim. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Boyd renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Boyd, thank you very much for bringing this legislation. Is it safe to say that this legislation takes care of much of the concerns we heard on item number 1 on this calendar previously?
Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would agree. I think that item number 1, some of the issues that were brought up will be addressed with this piece of legislation.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And sponsor, I'm curious, we're lowering the threshold from 50 to 25 employees that requires them to use the E-Verify program. Do we have any idea, or have you got on hand what additional costs this will put on any farmers or the agricultural community?
Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Actually, agriculture is not included in this.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you.
Representative Stewart.
Yeah, maybe you can help me because I remain perplexed by this whole effort to talk a lot about doing things about immigration and then among those who talk about it, doing nothing of substance, because we could stop the entire thing if we'd actually enforce our laws. I would refer everybody to the Washington Times article entitled Donald Trump Companies Ignoring E-Verify, Hiring Illegal Immigrants, where he talks, the Washington Times, a conservative paper, went through the former president's properties and found that only a handful used E-Verify. The vast number of them didn't, including Mar-a-Lago and many other major properties. And as you know, during the last administration, when we heard all this talk about doing so much about immigration, prosecutions of employers actually bottomed out. They reached a low. They went down. So the point is, at some point, if anybody's actually interested in enforcing the immigration laws, I think that would be super. But we've been sitting around talking about it for years and years and years. Some people have made their political careers out of this. Obviously, the solution is right in front of us. Obviously, former President Trump and many other politicians have no interest in actually doing something about this issue. If they did, then they would address the employers that are creating the issue in the first place. I understand you're saying you're reducing the number of, you're tightening the E-Verify provision. We just had an administration that spent hours and hours and hours talking about immigration. Why didn't they just pass federal legislation to mandate E-Verify at businesses like Mar-a-Lago? Why didn't they do that? Wouldn't that solve this whole problem? This entire debate is a complete political sham by people who have no intention of cracking down on employers who are benefiting from this labor. We could solve this in 10 minutes if people were really serious about it. These kind of laws, frankly, like the one you're passing today, are just part of a smokescreen designed to give citizens the false impression that certain politicians actually care about this issue and are actually doing something about it. Thank you.
Representative Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the member bringing this bill. And in fact, I signed on to this bill. But one thing I'd like to say about E-Verify is that it doesn't actually inform you whether or not the person whose name, birth date, and social security number you are entering into the system is actually a citizen of the United States. And that's because people can get ITIN numbers, and that can be entered into the system. But also people can give false information to employers, and they do, with a false name or birth date or social security number. And that's what E-Verify is really good at identifying. The company I work for, we have over 200 employees, and it happens. People give false name, birth date, and social security numbers all the time. And why do they do it? I don't know. Maybe there's a law that they violated. They're afraid of exposing themselves. Maybe they have child support due, or maybe they are illegal aliens. We really don't know why they give this false information. But to have E-Verify and to be able to verify that someone's name matches their birth date, matches their social security number, is great assurance that this person can legally work, and it's very helpful for employers and for everybody. Thank you.
Representative Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I call for previous question.
Question's been called. Any objection? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 1853 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Alexander, aye. Gant, aye. Hardaway's an aye. Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 79, 11 nays, one person unvoted.
House Bill 1853, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1688 by Chairman Holtzclaw, relative to alcoholic beverages. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Holtzclaw, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1686.
Chairman Holtzclaw moves to substitute conform to Senate Bill 1686, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairman Holtzclaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1686 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Holtzclaw moves passage of Senate Bill 1686 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kiesling, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is the same as the Senate amendment. We move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Holtzclaw, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Basically, what this Senate Bill 1686 does, it creates a common carrier license, and it was brought to me by the Tennessee Alcoholic Beverage Commission. And it's to make shipping of alcohol much safer. You know, basically it stops the bad actors by oversight, and it helps keep alcohol out of our minors' hands. With that, I renew my motion.
Chairman Holtzclaw renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1686 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member casts their vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Boyd, aye. Campbell, aye. Powell, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 82, 2 nays, 6 present, not voting.
Senate Bill 1686, having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1666 by Representative Smith, relative to divorce. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1661.
Representative Smith moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1661 without objection. So ordered. Representative Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1666 was brought to me by a group of circuit court judges that deal in family law. They were seeking the opportunity and the permissive use of video teleconferencing in any divorce or separate proceeding. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Smith moves passage of Senate Bill 1661 on third and final. Oh, sorry, where did it? Representative Smith renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1661 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Beck, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 1661 having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2414 by Representative Smith, relative to local government entities that self-fund a plan of insurance.
Representative Smith, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2414 on third and final consideration.
Representative Smith moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it the First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment adds to the bill. I defer to the sponsor for further explanation and move to adopt.
Chairman Crawford moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2414 comes to me from Hamilton County and 12 other counties that have self-insure plans. This is to permit counties to comply with subpoenas or court orders that are seeking HIPAA-protected information. This puts into Tennessee Code the procedure for working to meet those court-ordered subpoenas as well as providing for the necessary HIPAA protections. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Smith renews your motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2414 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Williams, aye. Hardaway, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
House Bill 2414 having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 753 by Chairman White, relative to school-based health-related services. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman White, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 503.
Chairman White moves to substitute conform to Senate Bill 503, properly second without objection. So ordered. Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 503 on third and final consideration.
Chairman White moves passage of Senate Bill 503 on third and final consideration, properly second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Hart, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate Amendment Number 1, move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Finance Ways and Means Committee Amendment Number 1, filed as House Amendment 2. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment Number 2.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is the same as Senate Amendment Number 2. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 2, withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, what the bill you have before you does, this bill's been out for, I think, about 12 years, been working it for a couple. Our school districts are required pursuant to federal law to provide certain health-related medical assistance services, like on our IEP students, inside the school facilities, such as physical therapy, occupational therapy, behavioral counseling, and speech therapy. Well, we're required to do it by the federal government, but we weren't getting reimbursed by the federal government to do these. So I want to thank TennCare for working with us this year and getting that done where our schools can reclaim these dollars as much as our across state, up to $60 million that our schools have to provide these services. And we weren't getting reimbursed from the federal government. This will enable us to do that. And for that, Mr. Speaker, I move passage, renew my motion.
Chairman White renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 503 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Ogles aye. Rudd aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
Senate Bill 503, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2659 by Speaker Sexton and Chairman Rudd, relative to mega site contracts.
Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. I move passes on HB 2659 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Rudd moves passage, following consecutive. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Keesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment, number 1, rewrites the bill. We defer to the sponsor for further explanation. Mr. Speaker, we move to adopt.
Chairman Keesling moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This legislation is being brought to require an entity that contracts with the Mega Site Authority of West Tennessee to report the number of jobs that are given to Tennesseans and how much labor is union labor to the State Building Commission, to the Speaker of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives. We are simply asking for transparency in the jobs that are being brought into West Tennessee. In watching recent news reports, we noticed that some concerning statements in the media, like the agreement calls for 13 million to 15 million hours of craft labor to build $2.5 billion electric truck facility, including site work, stamping, paint, assembly, plant construction. Another report stated that Ford, through labor contracts, will limit the number of workers a non-union contractor can hire without those employees going through a union system. All of West Tennessee House members, both Republican and Democrat, have local businesses that can perform quality work at the mega site. But we are afraid these Tennessee businesses will not have the opportunity to even obtain the contract simply because they are not unionized. Let me repeat what I said above again. It has been reported that labor contracts will limit the number of workers a non-union contractor can hire without those employees going through a union system. It is important to note that the state law, section 12-4-903, requires an instrumentality of the state when a contract is funded in part by the state to ensure that no project agreements require parties to enter into agreements with labor unions. We hope that Ford will follow our state law. Words do have meaning. Funded means incentives. With that being said, Mr. Speaker, I ask to roll the bill 3 weeks to see if Ford will obey state law. Thank you.
Without objection, roll 3 weeks. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1657 by Chairman Faison, relative to alcoholic beverages. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill substitute to and conform to Senate Bill 1768.
Chairman Faison moves the substitute form of Senate Bill 1768 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage on third and final consideration.
Chairman Faison moves passage of Senate Bill 1768 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
I renew my motion.
Chairman Faison renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1768 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member casts their vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 78, non nays, 3 present, unvoted.
Senate Bill 1768, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2172 by Leader Lamberth and Chairman Hawk and others relative to state employees. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2422.
Chairman Hawk moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2422 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2422 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Hawk moves passage of Senate Bill 2422 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy to be joined by these two fine gentlemen to my left and my right up here. They've asked me to carry this piece of legislation that is a product of our state employees and the Lee administration to update some language dealing with state employees and to codify the current burden of proof policy in step 3 of the employee disciplinary appeals process. We've worked on this for several years, and this is a culmination of a lot of people's work. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Hawk renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2422 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Ogles, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
Senate Bill 2422, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1843 by Chairman Terry and others relative to telemedicine.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1843 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Terry moves passage, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1843 adds audio-only healthcare services to current telemedicine practices that allow audio-only for behavioral health services. The CMS recognizes audio-only health services, and this bill would put Tennessee in line with what is currently allowed by CMS. I renew my motion.
Chairman Terry renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 1843 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Moody, aye. Crawford, aye. Ogles, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
House Bill 1843, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 563 by Chair Lady Moody and others relative to capacity of professional bondsmen.
Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 0563 on third and final consideration.
Chair Lady Moody moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Curcio, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1 clarifies that a professional bondsman's capacity should be at least 20 times the collateral pledged as cash. With that explanation, Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Curcio moves adoption of Amendment Number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Amendment Number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chair Lady Moody renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 563 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change your vote? Cheryl, aye. Moody, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays, one present, unvoted.
House Bill 563, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1848 by Chairman Howell relative to board member compensation.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1848 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Howell moves passage, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Mark White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt.
Chairman White moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, current law requires the county commission, which of course is the funding body for the county, to approve compensation for the county school board. Of course, the school board are elected separately, individuals elected and make up the composite school board. And currently, the law requires for the funding body, the county commission, to approve any kind of compensation for them as a separate line item. They cannot put it in their budget. This is the only county department where that happens. The sheriff's, county clerk, on and on and on. They're all compensated in their budget. This bill simply allows the school system to include school board compensation in its budget when presented to the county commission every year. The county commission would then vote it up and down, just like it does all the other county departments. And this would keep the county commission from having to do the untenable position of improving a pay raise for another elected body outside of the budgeting process. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Howell renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 1848 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Whitson, aye. Bricken, aye. Bricken, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
House Bill 1848, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1956 with Chairman Crawford and others relative to ground ambulance service providers.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1956 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Crawford moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the EMT Training Center bill. What it did is about 4 years ago, I started this process to where we were doing a pilot program in Northeast Tennessee because we had ambulances sitting around and didn't have people we could hire to drive them. They weren't qualified. So we started there and it was a great success. So the next year we passed a few more counties to participate. And this year I'm coming back asking for more. We're going to increase it from 10 to 20. And hopefully this will fix our problem and our citizens will get the quality of care they need by having more ambulances out there on the road, by us training them within our training facilities. I renew my motion.
Chairman Crawford renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of House Bill 1956 vote aye. When the bell rings, those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
House Bill 1956, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the regular calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. Representative Sexton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw HJR 875 from the committee in the House.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In consultation with Representative Love, I would like to make two different motions that are procedural in nature to put bills in their proper posture in the committee. With that, Mr. Speaker, I move that House Bill 2544 be heard in the Insurance Subcommittee this week.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objections, so ordered. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Bill 1900 be heard in the Education Administration Committee this week.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objections, so ordered. Representative Holsley, under unfinished business?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. State Corrections Subcommittee will set its final calendar for Tuesday, March 15th. The deadline to place a bill on notice in the subcommittee will be March 9th at 3:30.
Thank you. Pursuant to Rule 52, I name Chairman Whitson as the first prime sponsor of House Bill 1402. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, we have some messages from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House Bill 1195, substituted for the Senate bill on the same subject committee and passed by the Senate.
Thursday's message calendar. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House Bill 1362, substituted for the Senate bill on the same subject committee and passed by the Senate.
Thursday's message calendar. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Announcements.
Announcements. Representative Holtzclaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just as a reminder, the Department and Agency Subcommittee will hear its alcohol calendar on March the 8th. And please put your related alcohol legislation notice by 3:30 this Wednesday. This will also include the Premier Resort Omnibus Bill, which will be heard on March 8th. Please have your amendments filed by 10 a.m. on Monday, March 7th. The last calendar for this subcommittee will be March 15th. So deadline for bills to be put on notice will be March 9th at 3:30. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Doggett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Criminal Justice Subcommittee will be moving locations temporarily for this week only to House Hearing Room 1. So if you have a bill in that committee on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m., House Hearing Room 1 is where we will be found. Thank you.
Representative Lafferty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last calendar and the lottery calendar in the Higher Education Subcommittee will be heard on Tuesday, March the 8th. If you want your bill heard in Higher Education Subcommittee this year, put it on notice by Wednesday, March the 2nd by 3:30 p.m. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my wife is a pharmacist, I would be remiss if I did not mention that the Tennessee Pharmacist Association has a reception tonight at the Sheraton at the Sky Lounge.
Thank you. Representative Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cities and County Subcommittee final calendar will be Tuesday, March the 15th. The deadline will be 3:30 p.m. Wednesday, March the 9th. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Helton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The State Public Service Subcommittee will set its final calendar for Wednesday, March 9th. The deadline to place a bill on notice in the subcommittee will be this Wednesday, March 2nd at 3:30 p.m. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Littleton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I echo what all the rest of them have said. The Children and Family Affairs Subcommittee will hear its final calendar on Wednesday, March the 9th. Please put your bills on notice by this Wednesday, March the 2nd at 3:30 p.m. if you wish to have your bill heard in the Children and Family Affairs Subcommittee this year.
Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you have an amendment to the Transportation Omnibus Bill, the deadline is tomorrow at the end of business day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Haston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last calendar in K-12 subcommittee will be heard on Tuesday, March 8th. If you want your bill heard in K-12 this year, put it on notice by Wednesday, March 2nd by 3:30 p.m.
Thank you. Representative Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, I announced that the Health Subcommittee would hear their final calendar on the 8th of March. We've only had 5 bills turned in. If you have a health bill and you want to get it on the subcommittee calendar, Wednesday is your final option, Wednesday at 3:30. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Whitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, members, Transportation Subcommittee final calendar is
on Tuesday, 8 March. And again, you need your bills on notice by this Wednesday at 3:30. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone? Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Roll call.
Roll call. Alexander. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 92 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Lear Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 9 a.m. on Thursday, March 3rd, 2022.
Without objection, the House stands in recess till 9 a.m. on Thursday, March 3rd, 2022.